Mom, I think it's time we talked about putting you somewhere safer. Those were the words I heard my daughter say while standing in my own kitchen, in the house I'd owned for 37 years, 3 months after she'd moved back in to help me recover. She said it gently, the way you'd tell a child that the goldfish had died. My son-in-law Derek nodded from the doorway, his therapist face arranged in professional concern. The afternoon light caught the dust motes floating between us, and I remember thinking how strange it was that the world could look so peaceful while my heart was breaking. I was 62 years old, and my daughter wanted to put me in a home. I gripped the counter and felt the familiar flutter in my left hand, the tremor that had started the night of my stroke. Or what everyone called my stroke. That night in April, when I'd woken up dizzy, confused, my words slurring, my left side weak. Claire had found me on the bathroom floor and called the ambulance, rode with me to the hospital, held my hand while doctors ran their tests. She'd been such a devoted daughter that terrible night. I should have wondered about that sooner. But let me back up because understanding how I ended up here requires knowing who I was before I became someone's patient, someone's project. I grew up in a small house in Michigan, the youngest of 4 girls. My mother worked at the cannery, and my father drove trucks cross-country, gone more than he was home. We didn't have much, but Mom had this saying she'd repeat whenever things got hard. A woman who can't save herself is a woman who's already lost. She'd survived the Depression, raised 4 daughters mostly alone, and buried my father when I was 16. She never remarried, never complained, just worked and saved and made sure all 4 of us got through school. I think about Mom a lot these days. What she'd say if she could see what Claire tried to do to me. Probably something like, "Well, Margaret, what are you going to do about it?" I became a paralegal right out of community college, couldn't afford 4 years, so I made 2 work harder. Spent 30 years at a corporate law firm, handling everything from contracts to depositions. The lawyers called me the Vault because I never forgot a detail, never lost a document. I was good at my job. I was good at organizing, at seeing patterns, at knowing when something didn't add up. Funny how those skills saved my life. I met my husband, Harold, at a company picnic when I was 28. He was an engineer, quiet and steady, the kind of man who actually listened when you talked. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, and I made him wait 6 more months before I said yes, not because I didn't love him, but because Mom had taught me that a woman should be sure, really sure. We had 31 good years together. Not perfect, we fought about money sometimes, about his mother's interference, about whether to have more children after Claire. But we built something solid. A home. A life. A partnership where we covered each other's weaknesses and celebrated each other's wins. Harold died 4 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, in the garden he'd spent 20 years perfecting. One moment he was planting tomatoes, the next he was gone. I found him when I came out with lemonade, already past saving. The first year after was the hardest. The house felt too big, too quiet. I'd catch myself making coffee for 2, setting 2 places at dinner. Grief is strange that way. It lives in the small moments, the habits you don't realize you have until they become reminders of what you've lost. But I rebuilt. Joined the book club, started the garden group, found my rhythm as a single woman again. By year 3, I was genuinely happy. Different than before, but happy. I had my friends, my hobbies, my independence. And then I met Tom. He was at the library on a Tuesday afternoon, struggling with the self-checkout machine. I helped him scan his books, 3 mysteries and a biography of Theodore Roosevelt, and we ended up talking for 45 minutes in the parking lot. He'd been widowed 2 years, had 3 grown children, and had absolutely no idea how to use his smartphone. I taught him how to text that afternoon, and he asked me to dinner that weekend. Our first date was at a diner 3 blocks from my house, nothing fancy, just good coffee and better pie. We talked for 4 hours, about our spouses who'd passed, about the strange loneliness of sleeping alone after decades of partnership, about the guilt that came with feeling happy again. Tom understood in a way my other friends didn't. They'd never lost a spouse. They didn't know what it was like to feel disloyal for laughing at a movie or enjoying a sunset. My wife Ellen would have wanted me to be happy, Tom said over apple pie. Yours would have wanted the same for you. Harold would have wanted me to find someone who made me laugh. I agreed. He was always worried I was too serious. You? Serious? Tom grinned. The woman who just spent 20 minutes teaching me that my phone has a calculator. By our third date, I knew this was something real. Something worth protecting. Tom was kind, patient, funny in a dry way that crept up on you. He'd been an engineer for 40 years, built bridges that people drove over every day, and he approached problems the same way, methodically, carefully, with complete confidence that there was always a solution if you looked hard enough. I didn't know then how much I'd need that problem-solving mind, how much I'd need someone who believed solutions existed even when everything seemed hopeless. Claire hated it from the start. You're moving too fast, she'd say, though we'd been dating for months before I even mentioned it. You don't know anything about him. He could be after your money. My money. As if I were some wealthy widow instead of a retired paralegal with a paid-off house and a modest pension. But Claire had always been like this intense, possessive, certain that she knew best. Let me tell you about my daughter, because understanding Claire is essential to understanding what happened. Claire was a difficult child from the start. Colicky as a baby, stubborn as a toddler, dramatic as a teenager. She couldn't just lose at Monopoly, she had to flip the board. Couldn't just disagree with a teacher, she had to campaign for their firing. Everything was always at maximum intensity with Claire. Harold used to say she felt things more deeply than most people, that we just needed to help her learn to regulate. Tried. God knows I tried. The child psychologists, the therapists, the endless conversations about appropriate reactions. Claire would nod along, seem to understand, and then explode again the next week over something trivial. But she was also brilliant. Graduated top of her class, ran a successful yoga studio, seemed to have found her balance. When she married Derek, a psychology graduate student who specialized in emotional regulation, I thought maybe she'd finally found her partner in managing that intensity. I was wrong about Derek too, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before Derek, before the trouble, there were good years too. Years when Claire seemed happy, when our relationship felt almost normal. The boys Marcus and Jamie changed everything, at least for a while. I remember the day Marcus was born, how Claire held him in her arms and looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Mom, she'd said, I had no idea. I had no idea you could love someone this much. For a moment, I saw the daughter I'd always hoped she could be. I was a good grandmother. Present, involved, but careful not to overstep. I'd learned from Harold's mother what that looked like, and I was determined not to repeat her mistakes. I took the boys every other weekend when they were young, taught Marcus to play chess and Jamie to bake cookies. We had traditions. Saturday morning pancakes with chocolate chips, Sunday afternoon movies, walks in the park where I'd tell them stories about their grandfather. Marcus was the quiet one, like Harold. He'd sit for hours working on puzzles or reading books, content in his own company. Jamie was more like Claire, intense, emotional, quick to anger and quick to forgive. I worried about Jamie sometimes, saw too much of his mother in his outbursts. But he was also fiercely loving, the kind of kid who'd make you a card for no reason, who'd hug you so hard it hurt. Those boys are teenagers now. 16 and 14. Old enough to understand what their mother did, young enough to still need a grandmother. I think about them constantly, what they've been told, what they believe, whether they hate me for what happened to their parents. They don't. At least they say they don't, but we'll get to that. Then last March, everything changed. Derek's practice hit some kind of trouble. Claire was vague about it when she called. Insurance issues, she said. Billing problems. Their visits became more frequent. Claire started asking questions about my finances, how I was managing since Dad died, whether I'd thought about simplifying things. You're all alone in this big house, Mom. Aren't you lonely? I wasn't lonely. I had my book club every other Thursday at Barbara's house, where we'd pretend to discuss literary fiction while actually gossiping about everyone we knew. I had my garden, my Tuesday morning coffee group with the other women from the neighborhood, my watercolor class on Saturday mornings. I was living the life your generation writes articles about active seniors, aging in place, all that. I'd even started dating Tom, which Claire absolutely hated. Tom seems nice. I'd tell her about the retired engineer I'd met at the library. We'd gone to dinner 3 times, the museum once, and he'd kissed me goodnight on my front porch like we were teenagers. I'd felt alive again in a way I'd forgotten was possible. He seems interested in your money, she'd snap back. Claire, I'm a retired paralegal, not a Rockefeller. The house is worth a lot, Mom. You need to be careful. The house. It always came back to the house. Then came the night of the stroke, May 2nd. I remember because it was the day after my birthday, and I'd just gotten home from dinner with Tom. He'd taken me to that Italian place downtown, the one with the candles on every table and the violin player who wandered between booths. We'd shared tiramisu and talked about taking a trip together, maybe up to see the fall leaves in Vermont. It felt fine, happy, even. I'd eaten chicken marsala and drunk exactly 1.5 glasses of wine. I'd brushed my teeth, taken my usual medications, just a blood pressure pill, nothing else, and gotten into bed. But Claire had stopped by that afternoon, hadn't she? To bring me a birthday present she'd forgotten to give me the night before. And she'd made me tea. Chamomile, she'd said, to help me sleep after such a nice birthday. You deserve to relax, Mom. You've been running around so much lately with Tom. The tea had tasted slightly bitter. I'd mentioned it, and Claire had laughed. That's the valerian root. Natural relaxation. Drink it all, it's good for you. I'd drunk the whole cup while we chatted about her yoga studio, about whether she should hire another instructor. I might need to make some changes, she'd said. Money's tighter than we expected. I'd felt so sympathetic. I'd even thought about offering to help. Then I'd gone to bed, and 8 hours later, my whole life had changed. The next thing I remember, I was on the bathroom floor and nothing worked right. The cold tile against my cheek. The way my left arm wouldn't move when I told it to. The strange disconnection between my brain and my mouth, words coming out garbled and wrong. I remember being terrified, completely terrified, in a way I hadn't felt since Harold collapsed in the garden. Claire found me. She'd let herself in with her key. When had I given her a key? And heard me fall. She held my hand in the ambulance, tears streaming down her face. It's going to be okay, Mom. I'm here. I'm going to take care of you. The hospital test showed elevated blood pressure, some irregularities on the MRI, signs consistent with a minor ischemic event. Morrison, the neurologist, seemed puzzled, though. Usually we see more warning signs, he'd said. Any history of TIAs? Mini-strokes? Nothing. I'd been healthy as a horse. My last checkup had been 3 months earlier, perfect blood pressure, perfect cholesterol, no concerns at all. But Claire had been prepared with everything. She knew all my medications, had my medical history on her phone, answered questions I was too confused to process. The hospital staff loved her. Such a devoted daughter, the nurses kept saying. Your mom is lucky to have you. She moved in the next week. Just temporarily, she said, until I got back on my feet. Derek stayed at their place to handle his patients, but Claire was there every morning with my pills, so many pills now, in a little daily organizer she'd bought every evening with encouragement about my recovery exercises. These will help with the confusion, she'd say, handing me small white tablets. Dr. Morrison prescribed them. She cooked healthy meals, drove me to follow-up appointments, fielded calls from worried friends. Mom's not quite up for visitors yet. I'd hear her say through the bedroom door. Maybe in a few weeks when she's stronger. The weeks stretched on. I did get stronger, my words came back. The weakness improved, but Claire seemed to notice problems I didn't feel. She'd mentioned to Derek that I'd repeated myself 3 times. She'd point out that I'd forgotten to take my afternoon medication. She started a little notebook, logging my confusion episodes. I saw it once, left open on the kitchen counter. Pages of dated entries in Claire's neat handwriting. May 15, asked about lunch twice within 30 minutes. Seemed disoriented about time of day. May 18, couldn't remember Tom's last name. Got agitated when corrected. May 22. Found wandering in the garden at 6 a.m., unsure how she got there. I hadn't wandered anywhere. I'd been checking on my roses like I did every morning. But there it was, documented. Evidence of my decline. I just want to keep track for the doctor, she'd explain when I asked about the notebook. My friends from book club tried to visit in June. I heard the doorbell from my bedroom, heard voices downstairs, Barbara's distinctive laugh, Joan asking how I was really doing. Claire turned them away at the door. She's napping, and the doctor says she needs her rest. Maybe next month. She said it so sweetly, so full of concern. But when I came downstairs 20 minutes later, wide awake, having heard the whole thing, the book club ladies were gone. You need to focus on recovery, not socializing, Claire told me. Doctor, Morrison agrees that too much stimulation could set you back. Did he? I wasn't sure anymore. The follow-up appointments had become Claire and the doctor conversations, where I felt more observed than consulted. Claire would list my symptoms, the forgetfulness, the confusion, the personality changes. Morrison would nod and adjust medications. I'd sit there, trying to interject, but the words would come out wrong. Garbled. Confused. Am I having personality changes? I asked Claire in the car afterward. The question sounded strange in my mouth. The syllables sticky. You're just not yourself, Mom. But that's normal after a stroke. Here's what I did know. I felt strange. Not stroke strange, but off somehow. My sleep was chaotic. I'd be exhausted by noon, wide awake at 3 in the morning. I'd have periods of sharp clarity followed by hours where everything felt muffled and distant, like trying to think through cotton wool. My hands shook. I'd find myself staring at objects, unable to remember what I'd meant to do with them. And Claire was always there to witness it, to document it, to share concerned looks with Derek during his evening visits. How are you feeling today, Margaret? Derek would ask in his clinical voice, the one I'd heard him use on the phone with his patients. I'm tired. The words were so hard to find. Confused. He'd nod, make notes on his phone. That's consistent with what we're seeing. The cognitive impact from the stroke is taking time to resolve. What stroke? Some part of me wanted to scream. I was fine. I was fine until the tea. But that thought would slip away as soon as it formed, lost in the fog that seemed to follow every dose of those little white pills. It was Tom who first made me suspicious, actually. He'd been trying to reach me for weeks, but Claire had changed my phone settings to reduce stress, and I wasn't getting most of my calls or texts. She'd mentioned it casually. I silenced notifications from anyone you don't talk to regularly, Mom. You don't need all that noise while you're recovering. Tom finally showed up at the house in early July with flowers. Yellow roses, my favorite. He'd remembered from a conversation we'd had at that Italian restaurant a lifetime ago. Claire met him at the door. I watched from the living room window, my heart racing in a way it hadn't since before all this started. I'm sorry, but Margaret's not well enough for visitors. The stress isn't good for her recovery. I'm her friend. Tom's voice was steady, but I could hear the worry underneath. I just want to see if she's okay. Her doctor has advised limited contact during this phase. I'm sure you understand. Claire's yoga instructor voice, all gentle firmness. The voice she used with difficult clients, the ones who didn't want to try a challenging pose. Tom looked past her, up at the house. For just a second, our eyes met through the window. His face changed concern, shifting into something else. Alarm, maybe. Recognition that something was very, very wrong. He left, but I saw him glance back twice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about that look on Tom's face, about my book club friends being turned away, about the fact that I hadn't actually spoken to anyone outside this house except doctors in 2 months. The tremor in my hand seemed worse. My thoughts felt sticky, hard to organize. But one thought pushed through clearly. This isn't right. Mom's voice in my head, clear as day. A woman who can't save herself is a woman who's already lost. The next morning, I pretended to take my pills. All of them, the blood pressure medication, the anticoagulant, the supplements Claire had added to my routine. I held them under my tongue, waited for Claire to leave the room, then spat them into a tissue. I wrapped the tissue carefully and tucked it into my bra, against my heart. 6 hours later, my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. The tremor in my hand had calmed. I could think in straight lines again. It was like stepping out of a fog bank. Suddenly, the world had edges again. Colors, clarity. I took my pills the next morning, properly this time, as a test. By afternoon, I was dizzy and confused, my words slurring slightly when Derek came by. "How are you feeling today, Margaret?" he asked in that clinical voice. "I'm not sure." Tired. He and Claire exchanged a look. He made a note in his phone. That night, I started keeping 2 sets of pills. The ones Claire watched me take and the ones I actually swallowed. It's remarkable what you can palm when people think you're incompetent. Years of doing card tricks with the grandkids, Claire's boys, Marcus and Jamie, paid off in ways I never expected. I flushed Claire's pills and took only what Dr. Morrison had actually prescribed, the medications I'd verified during a moment of clarity by calling the pharmacy directly. "Hi, this is Margaret Hoffman. I need to verify my prescriptions." "Of course, Mrs. Hoffman. I show blood pressure medication, lisinopril, and that's it. Are you expecting something else?" "Just blood pressure medication. Nothing else." So what were all those other pills Claire had been giving me? Within 3 days, I felt like myself again. Not stroke recovery myself, actual myself. Sharp, clear, suspicious as hell. And absolutely furious. I started paying attention to everything. To the way Claire angled her body to block me during conversations with Derek, creating little private conferences about my condition. To how she'd started sorting my mail before I saw it, to reduce stress. I found a letter from my bank about a new authorized user on my account, Claire's name buried in the recycle. To the fact that she'd gotten power of attorney paperwork from somewhere and kept mentioning how simple it would be to just sign. "It's only for emergencies, Mom. Just in case." Derek's lawyer friend drew it up. I smiled and said I'd think about it. Then I hid the paperwork in my closet and started keeping a journal. The journal was hidden in a box of old photos, our wedding pictures, baby Claire, Harold in the garden. I wrote down every coherent thought, every observation, every moment of clarity. I noted the pills Claire gave me versus the pills I actually took. I wrote down the dates my friends tried to visit and were turned away. And I started to wonder about that night in May. The night of my stroke, I'd felt fine before bed. I'd taken my regular medications, just the blood pressure pill, verified by the pharmacy. But Claire had stopped by that evening. She'd made me tea. Chamomile with valerian, she'd said. Had it been more than valerian? The thought seemed paranoid even to me. This was my daughter. My child. The girl whose diapers I'd changed, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college application essays I'd edited. Claire could be intense, sure, controlling sometimes, but this? Deliberately causing a stroke? Then I overheard the phone conversation. It was mid-July, and I'd been secretly off Claire's pills for almost 2 weeks. My mind was crystal clear. I'd come downstairs for water, silent in my slippers, moving carefully, and heard Claire in my study. Door mostly closed. No, she's definitely declining. Derek's documented everything, the confusion, the memory issues, personality changes, wandering at night. A pause. "Yes, doctor." Morrison agrees the trajectory is concerning. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. "Well, that's why I'm calling. I think we need to talk about next steps for the house." "The house." "My house?" "The house Harold and I had bought 37 years ago, raised Claire in, filled with decades of memories. The market's good right now, and honestly, a place like this in this neighborhood, I know, but she's going to need care. Professional care, and that's expensive. It only makes sense to, right? Exactly. I was thinking we could list it by September, before things slow down for winter. I stood in the hallway, glass of water shaking in my hand. Not from stroke tremors this time. From rage? Derek thinks we can get guardianship by August if we need to. His lawyer friend said with the medical documentation it should be straightforward. No one's gonna believe her if she objects. We have months of records showing cognitive decline. I went back upstairs so quietly, got into bed, stared at the ceiling. My daughter was planning to have me declared incompetent, sell my house, and put me in a facility. And based on what? On symptoms she'd created by giving me God knows what in those pills. But I needed proof. Real proof, not just a paranoid mother's suspicions. I'd spent 30 years as a paralegal. I knew how evidence worked, how documentation mattered, how to build a case that would stand up in court. The next morning, I acted confused when Claire brought my pills. I let my words slur just a little, rubbed my eyes like I was disoriented. Did I eat breakfast already? I asked, though I could see the empty cereal bowl right in front of me. Claire's face lit up with something that looked almost like satisfaction. Yes, Mom, about 20 minutes ago. Remember? Oh, right. I let myself sound uncertain. She made a note on her phone. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled vaguely and let her think she was winning. I needed 3 things. Proof of what was in those pills, proof that I was actually competent when not taking them, and proof of Claire's intentions. The pills were easiest. I'd been collecting them for 2 weeks, storing them in an old vitamin bottle in that photo box. I looked up toxicology testing online during the few hours. When Claire ran errands, she still taught yoga classes 3 times a week, couldn't give up her studio entirely. There was a lab across town that did private testing, no questions asked. All I needed was a way to get there. That's where Tom came back into the picture. I managed to get to my cell phone when Claire was in the shower. Found Tom's number, she'd blocked it, but I found it in my contacts and unblocked it, texted quickly, "Need help. Can you meet me at Corner Market Thursday, 10 a.m.? Don't tell anyone." His response came back in 30 seconds. "I'll be there. Worried about you?" Thursday morning, I told Claire I wanted to walk to the corner market, just for some fresh air. "I feel strong today." She looked uncertain. "I should come with you." "I'm walking 2 blocks, Claire. I'm 62, not 90. I need to rebuild my independence." I said it more sharply than I'd spoken in months. She backed down, but I saw her watch from the window as I left. Tom was waiting in the market parking lot, sitting on a bench with a newspaper he wasn't reading. The relief on his face when he saw me walking normally, talking clearly, could have powered the whole neighborhood. "Margaret, Jesus." He stood up, dropped the paper. "What's going on?" You look like yourself again." "I am myself again." I need you to take these to a lab." I handed him the vitamin bottle with the pills. "I need to know what's in them, and I need you not to tell anyone you've seen me." "What are these?" "I'm not sure yet, but I think my daughter has been poisoning me." I watched him process that, saw the disbelief war with what he'd witnessed, Claire turning him away, my apparent deterioration, and now this clear, coherent woman standing in front of him, speaking in complete sentences without a tremor in sight. "The stroke?" he asked quietly. "I don't think I had one. Not a real one. I think she gave me something that made it look like one." "Margaret, that's—" He stopped, looked at the pills in his hand. "That's monstrous. That's why I need proof. Please." He took the pills. "What else do you need?" "Time. And maybe a lawyer's number if you know a good one." My daughter Beth is a civil attorney, estate law mostly, but she knows people. I'll call her today. We talked for exactly 8 more minutes, all I dared before Claire might get suspicious, and made a plan. Tom would get the pills tested, contact his daughter, and keep everything quiet until we knew more. I'd continue documenting everything and acting impaired enough not to raise Claire's suspicions. "Be careful," Tom said as I left. "If you're right about this, if I'm right, my daughter tried to disable me so she could steal my house. I'll be careful. You just get me those test results." I walked home slowly, letting my left leg drag just slightly, playing the part. Claire was watching from the window when I came up the walk. I smiled vaguely and complained about being tired. The test results came back 8 days later. Tom's daughter Beth brought them herself, meeting me at the market during another walk for fresh air. She was in her mid-30s, professional, no, nonsense, with her father's steady gaze and a leather briefcase full of documents. The pills contained a cocktail that would make a pharmacist weep. Benzodiazepines to cause confusion and memory problems, a beta blocker to lower blood pressure dangerously, and something called scopolamine that Beth said was used in motion sickness patches but could cause severe disorientation at higher doses. These aren't stroke medications, Beth said, her voice tight. These are medications that would cause stroke-like symptoms. The combination would create dizziness, confusion, tremors, slurred speech. Where did you get these? My daughter's been giving them to me, calling them supplements and saying they're doctor-approved. Your daughter is drugging you to make you appear incompetent? I think she may have caused the original stroke too, or what everyone thinks was a stroke. She made me tea that night. Chamomile, she said. Beth's professional composure cracked. We need to get you out of that house. Today? No. I surprised myself with how firm I sounded. Not yet. If I leave now, she'll know I'm on to her. She'll destroy evidence, claim I'm paranoid or delusional, say this is proof of my cognitive decline. I need more documentation. I need her to show her hand completely. Beth looked like she wanted to argue, but she'd clearly inherited her father's ability to recognize determination when she saw it. Then we do this right. I'm going to need you to do some things that won't be comfortable. We started meeting every few days, always during Claire's yoga classes or errands. Beth would bring her laptop and legal pads, spread documents across whatever table we'd commandeered, and walk me through what we needed. Elder abuse cases are hard to prosecute, she explained during our second meeting at a coffee shop 20 minutes from my house. The victims are often actually impaired, which makes their testimony unreliable. Defense attorneys love to argue that the victim is confused, paranoid, misremembering. We need to make that impossible. How do we do that? Documentation? Independent verification. We need a paper trail so clear that no jury could doubt it. She pulled out a checklist. First, we establish your competence. Not just now we need to prove you were never impaired, that everything Claire documented was manufactured. That means a full neurological workup from a doctor she's never met, cognitive testing, brain imaging. If there was never a stroke, your brain should show no evidence of one. And if there was a stroke, the fear crept into my voice despite my best efforts. Beth shook her head. Even if there was some kind of event, we can show that your current competence contradicts everything Claire's been reporting. But honestly, based on what you've described, the rapid improvement when you stopped the pills, the perfect clarity, now I don't think we're going to find any stroke damage. She was right. Second, Beth continued, we need to document the poisoning, not just what's in the pills, but the pattern of administration. Dates, times, dosages. Can you keep a log? I've already started one. Good. Third, we need proof of intent. It's not enough to show she gave you harmful medications. We need to prove she knew what she was doing and why. That means recordings, if possible. I know it feels wrong to record your own daughter, but it doesn't feel wrong at all. The words came out harder than I intended. She tried to give me brain damage so she could steal my house. Recording her is the least of what she deserves. Beth looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. My dad said you were tough. I see what he means. Over the next 3 weeks, Beth and I built a case that would make a prosecutor jealous. I got a second medical opinion from a neurologist. Beth recommended Dr. Chen, a woman about Claire's age with a no-nonsense manner and a reputation for thoroughness. I met her during a walk to the library, went in through the back entrance that Claire couldn't see from the street. Chen ran a full battery of tests, MRI, cognitive assessments, blood work, and found no evidence of stroke damage, past or present. Your brain looks perfectly healthy for a woman your age, she said, studying the scans. No indication of ischemic events, no scarring, no damage. I'm frankly baffled by the original diagnosis. She wanted to see Dr. Morrison's records, wanted to understand what he'd seen that she wasn't seeing now. I set up a video camera in my bedroom, hidden in an old alarm clock Beth provided. Digital, high quality, motion activated. It captured Claire bringing me pills, her voice sweet as honey. Time for your medication, Mom. These will help you feel better. It captured me pretending to swallow them, Claire watching with satisfaction, leaving the room to note another successful dose in her little notebook. I recorded our conversations on my own phone, which I'd started keeping hidden when Claire wasn't looking. Claire talking to Derek about their plans for the house. Once we have guardianship, we can list it within a week. Claire calling her real estate agent friend. Yes, September is the target. The neighborhood comps are strong. Claire on the phone with the nursing facility. We're looking at placement for my mother. Probably by September. She's declining rapidly, needs memory care. And I kept taking the fake pills she gave me, palming them, disposing of them while taking only my actual prescribed medications. I documented every single day that I was clear-headed, sharp, completely myself. Wrote cognitive tests in my journal, solved crossword puzzles, recorded myself reciting poems I'd memorized in high school. Mom, you seem better today, Claire said one morning in early August, and I heard the worry in her voice. Worry that I was improving. Worry that her plan was failing. Oh, I still feel foggy. I lied. But I'm trying to push through. She relaxed. Brought me an extra pill that afternoon. This should help with the afternoon confusion, she said. I took it, held it under my tongue, spat it out later. Sent it to the lab with Tom. Stronger dose of the same cocktail. By mid-August, I had everything. Medical proof I was competent. Toxicology reports on 30 different pills. Video of Claire administering them. Audio of her discussing selling my house and having me committed. A second neurologist's opinion that I'd never had a stroke at all, that whatever had happened in May was either chemically induced or misdiagnosed. And then Derek made the mistake that handed me the final piece. He came by on a Friday evening, sat down across from me at my own kitchen table with that clinical expression he wore like a mask. Claire stood behind him, arms crossed, watching. Margaret, Claire and I have been talking with Dr. Morrison. We're all concerned about your trajectory. The confusion episodes are increasing, and we think it might be time to consider a care facility where you can get professional support. EC. I kept my voice small, uncertain. We've found a wonderful place. Meadowbrook Senior Living. Very kind staff, nice rooms, a lovely garden. They specialize in memory care. I don't want to leave my house. I know this is hard. His voice was so gentle, so professionally compassionate. This man who'd documented my fake decline, who'd helped plan my imprisonment, who'd married my daughter and turned her into a monster, or maybe just helped her become what she'd always been. But Claire can't keep caring for you indefinitely. And honestly, selling the house would fund your care. The market's very good right now. When? I whispered. We're thinking end of September. That gives us time to transition you gradually, get the house ready to list. And if I say no, he shifted in his seat, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. Margaret, Doctor, Morrison has documented significant cognitive decline. If necessary, we can pursue guardianship to make sure you get the care you need. It's not what we want. We'd rather you agreed voluntarily, but we have to think about your safety. There it was. The threat, dressed up as concern. I see, I said again. Looked down at my hands, not trembling from pills anymore, trembling from rage I was barely containing. Can I think about it? Of course. Take the weekend. But Margaret, he leaned forward, put his hand on mine. This is really what's best for everyone. Best for everyone. By which he meant best for him and Claire, who'd have my house to sell, my accounts to access, my life to package up and dispose of. That night, I called Beth. I'm ready to move. Monday morning? Are you sure? We could wait. Gather more. They're planning to put me in a facility by September and pursue guardianship if I resist. I'm done playing victim. Then Monday it is. I'll have everyone there by 9. Monday morning, when Claire brought my pills, I took them as usual, acted foggy and compliant through breakfast scrambled eggs she'd made, probably wondering if this would be one of the last meals she'd have to cook for her troublesome mother. She left at 9:30 for yoga class, the studio she was probably planning to save with my house money. The moment her car turned the corner, I moved. Tom pulled up first. Then Beth arrived with Dr. Chen and a notary public, everything we needed to document my competence beyond any doubt. Chen examined me right there in my living room, ran through cognitive assessments while Beth's notary witnessed everything. Completely normal neurological function, doctor, Chen said into her voice recorder. Patient demonstrates full cognitive capacity, no evidence of impairment. Beth had me sign a new power of attorney naming Tom as my agent, revoking any previous documents, and a detailed statement describing everything that had happened over the past 3 months. Tom helped me pack while Beth photographed the pill bottles Claire had left in the kitchen, the notebook where she'd logged my confusion, the power of attorney paperwork she'd been trying to get me to sign. Everything documented, everything preserved. Where will you go? Dr. Chen asked. My sister Linda's place, 2 counties over. Just until we're ready. Ready for what? Beth smiled, and I saw her father's determination in that expression. Ready to make sure this never happens to anyone else. We were gone by 11. I left a note on the kitchen counter, in shaky handwriting that I hoped looked confused. Claire staying with friends for a few days. Need some space to think. Mom? Let her think I was wandering. Confused. Let her panic about where her incompetent mother had gotten to. Claire called my phone 40 times that afternoon. I watched the notifications stack up and didn't answer. Derek called 12 times. I didn't answer those either. They showed up at my friend Barbara's house that evening. Wrong direction, wrong county. Found nothing. Called more. Texted threats disguised as concern. Mom, you're not well enough to be alone. Please tell us where you are. We're worried. They finally reached Linda on Wednesday, found her number somehow, probably from my old address book. But Linda had been coached, and she's a better liar than anyone gives her credit for. Margaret? No, I haven't seen her in months. Is something wrong? By Thursday, Beth filed a police report on my behalf. Elder abuse. Fraude. Attempted theft. Assault with intent to cause bodily harm. Friday morning, we had the meeting I'd been dreaming about for weeks. Morrison's office. I'd requested a consultation to discuss my care plan, and Claire had jumped at the chance to attend. She thought I was giving in, accepting the inevitable. She arrived with Derek, both of them wearing their concerned family member faces like masks. They walked into that conference room expecting a confused, declining mother ready to sign her life away. Instead, they found me sitting at the head of the table, clear-eyed, sharp, smiling with Beth, Dr. Chen, and Detective Garcia from the Elder Abuse Unit. I will never forget the look on Claire's face. The shock, the rapid calculation, the moment she realized that the confused, declining mother she'd been documenting for 3 months was sitting there in full possession of her faculties, surrounded by lawyers and law enforcement. Hi, honey, I said. Glad you could make it. We have so much to discuss. Detective Garcia laid out the evidence, all of it. The pills, arranged in labeled evidence bags. The toxicology reports, professional and damning. The videos of Claire administering medications. The audio recordings of her planning to sell my house and have me committed. Chen presented her examination findings. No stroke, never any stroke, perfectly competent 62-year-old woman with no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Morrison sat at the other end of the table looking like he wanted to disappear through the floor. He'd made the original stroke diagnosis based on Claire's report and the hospital's tests that showed exactly what you'd expect if someone had been dosed with the cocktail we'd found in those pills. I want to be very clear, doctor. Morrison said to Claire, his voice shaking. You told me she was having these symptoms at home. You brought her to every follow-up reporting cognitive decline. You described wandering, confusion, personality changes. You said she was confused. Claire's voice went high, desperate. She couldn't remember things. She was slurring her words. Because you were poisoning her, Beth said calmly. We have video of you administering pills you told her were supplements. We have toxicology reports showing those pills contained medications that would cause exactly the symptoms you reported. We have recordings of you discussing selling her house and having her committed. This is insane. Claire turned to me, her face flushed, eyes wild. Mom, tell them you know I was just trying to help you. I gave up my life to take care of you after your stroke. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, saw the desperation underneath the anger, the fear behind the bluster. She'd come so close to pulling this off. Another month, maybe 2, and I would have been in memory care, my house on the market, my accounts under her control. Claire, I said quietly, you gave me tea the night I had my stroke. Chamomile, you said. What was really in it? Chamomile. Just chamomile. Mom, you're confused. They're confusing you. I'm not confused anymore. Funny how that happened when I stopped taking the pills you gave me. Derek stood up abruptly. We're not saying anything else without a lawyer. Excellent idea, Detective Garcia said. You're both going to need one. Here's what I learned in the weeks and months that followed. Claire and Derek were in far worse financial trouble than anyone knew. Derek's practice wasn't just having insurance problems, he'd been padding credentials, claiming specializations he didn't have, billing for services he wasn't qualified to provide. Insurance companies were investigating. The state licensing board had opened a case. He was looking at losing his license, possible fraud charges, potential prison time, and complete financial ruin. They needed money fast, large amounts of money. And my house paid off, worth almost $600,000 in this market, would have solved everything. The plan had been elegant in its cruelty. Cause a medical crisis with that drugged tea, document a decline using those pills, get guardianship through Derek's lawyer friend, sell the house for Mom's care, pocket the difference after installing me in the cheapest facility they could find. If I'd been a little older, a little less sharp, a little more trusting of my devoted daughter, it would have worked. The chamomile tea that night had contained a massive dose of blood pressure medication and scopolamine enough to create symptoms that would look exactly like a stroke. Rush to the hospital confused and impaired. Let the doctors make the diagnosis based on what they saw. Then spend the following months keeping me impaired, documented, and declining. My daughter had tried to give me brain damage so she could steal my house. I want to pause here because I know some of you are wondering, how does a mother get to this point? How does the baby you nursed, the toddler whose tears you wiped, the teenager whose heartbreaks you soothed, how does that child become someone who would poison you? I've spent many sleepless nights asking myself the same question. Part of it, I think, is desperation. Claire and Derek were facing financial ruin, real, complete financial ruin. His career was over. Their lifestyle was unsustainable, and they saw no way out except through my assets. Desperation makes people do terrible things. It doesn't excuse what they did, but it helps me understand the twisted logic that led them there. Part of it is entitlement. Claire had always believed she deserved more attention, more resources, more consideration. When she needed money, she looked at my house and saw not my home, but her inheritance. Her birthright. Something she was owed. And part of it, I think, is something darker. Something broken in Claire that I never fully understood. That intensity that made her flip the Monopoly board as a child, it never really went away. It just learned to hide, to plan, to scheme instead of explode. Maybe I should have seen it coming? Maybe if I'd been a different kind of mother, made different choices, intervened more forcefully during those difficult teenage years. But that way lies madness. You can what-if yourself into oblivion and never find an answer. What I know is that Claire made choices. Adult choices, deliberate choices, repeated over months. She chose to drug me. She chose to isolate me. She chose to steal from me. Those were her decisions, and she bears responsibility for them. I've had to learn to hold both truths at once. I love my daughter, and my daughter is a criminal who tried to destroy me. Both things are true. Both things will always be true. The criminal case took 8 months. Claire pleaded guilty to elder abuse and fraud. Her lawyer convinced her the evidence was overwhelming, which it was. Derek got separate charges for his credential fraud on top of the abuse charges. They both received probation. The prosecutor said my competence actually worked against harsher sentences, made it seem like less serious harm since I'd figured it out and stopped it. But the probation terms were strict. No contact with me without supervision, mandatory counseling, full restitution for my legal fees and medical costs, plus the emotional distress damages a civil court awarded me later. The house they'd been so desperate for. I did sell it eventually. Too many bad memories. In those walls, in that kitchen where Claire had made poison tea, in that bathroom where I'd woken up that terrible morning, in every room where she'd watched me struggle and documented my suffering with satisfaction. I sold it for top dollar and bought a beautiful condo near Linda, close to family who actually cared about me. The money Claire and Derek had been so desperate for, I set up a trust for my grandchildren, Marcus and Jamie. Claire's boys, the innocent ones in all this. 16 and 14 now, old enough to understand some of what happened. They'll get the money when they turn 25, managed by trustees who aren't their parents. Claire hates this, I'm told through her lawyer. Hates that she's close to money she can't touch, that her children will benefit from the grandmother she tried to destroy. I think about that sometimes, whether I should feel guilty for the position I've put those boys in. But they didn't poison me. They didn't scheme to steal my house. And when they reached out careful emails at first, then supervised phone calls, they wanted to know me. The real me? Not the declining, confused version their mother had been describing to justify her plans. Grandma, Marcus said during one of our calls, his voice cracking the way teenage boys' voices do, I'm really sorry about what Mom did. We didn't know. I know you didn't, sweetheart. That's why I'm still here. Jamie's scared to call you, Marcus admitted. He thinks you hate us. Tell your brother I could never hate either of you. You're my grandchildren. What your mother did doesn't change that. We've rebuilt something, the boys and I. It's different than before, more careful, more honest, shadowed by what happened, but it's real. Marcus sends me photos of his chess tournaments. Jamie texts me baking questions and pictures of his attempts at my chocolate chip cookie recipe. We have video calls every other Sunday, supervised by a social worker Claire resents but can't refuse. I hope someday we can do it without supervision. I hope someday Jamie will believe I don't blame him for his mother's choices. I hope someday we'll sit together at holidays again, not as the fractured family we've become, but as something new, something stronger for having survived the breaking. But that's the future. And I've learned not to count on futures anymore. Morrison retired 6 months after the case settled. He'd trusted a daughter's reports about her mother without questioning, without verifying, without ever considering that the devoted caregiver might be the source of the problem. It broke something in him, I think. Last I heard, he was doing volunteer work at a free clinic, trying to make amends in his own way. Tom and I are still together. Turns out being rescued from your own daughter's murder plot is quite the foundation for a relationship, and yes, I call it murder, because that's what it would have been eventually. Those pills were destroying my brain cells day by day. Another year, and the damage might have been real and permanent. We just got back from a cruise to Alaska, Tom and I. 7 days on a ship the size of a small city, watching glaciers calve into waters so blue they didn't look real. We stood on the deck one morning, wrapped in blankets against the cold, and watched a pod of humpback whales breach one after another like they were showing off just for us. You know what I keep thinking? Tom said, his arm around my shoulders. What? A year ago, you would have been in that facility. Drugged, confused, missing all of this. He gestured at the glacier, at the whales, at the vast Alaskan wilderness surrounding us. Claire would have won. But she didn't. No, she didn't. He pulled me closer. I'm glad you're stubborn, determined. I corrected him. Stubborn sounds negative. He laughed, and the sound echoed across the water. I realized, standing there in that pristine wilderness, that I was genuinely, completely happy. Not in spite of what had happened, but maybe because of it. Surviving Claire's betrayal had taught me something about myself, about my strength, my resilience, my ability to adapt and fight and win. We ate fresh salmon prepared 6 different ways on that cruise. Watched the northern lights dance across the sky. Made friends with other couples our age. Swapped stories about grandchildren and retirement and the strange journey of getting older. Normal things. Beautiful things. The kind of things Claire would have stolen from me along with everything else. I paid for that cruise with my own money, from my own accounts that nobody controls but me. I'm 64 now, 2 years past that terrible night when Claire made me chamomile tea and tried to take everything. I take exactly 1 medication blood pressure, the real kind prescribed by a doctor I chose myself after interviewing 3 different candidates. I picked Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to the neurologist who helped prove my competence, but similar in her thoroughness and her refusal to take shortcuts. Every 3 months, I get my prescription from a pharmacy I verify personally, where the pharmacist knows my face and my story. I store my pills in a cabinet I alone access, and I count them weekly just to be sure. Paranoid. Maybe, but paranoia kept me alive when trust almost killed me. I sleep soundly most nights. Occasionally I'll wake at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, convinced I'm back in that fog-filled prison Claire created for me. But those nights are rarer now. The body remembers trauma, but it also learns to let go. My hands don't shake. My mind is as sharp as it ever was, maybe sharper now that I know what it feels like to have that sharpness stolen. I do crossword puzzles every morning, not because I need to prove anything, but because I enjoy the reminder that my brain works. That Claire didn't win. That the woman she tried to destroy is still here, still thinking, still fighting. And I've started volunteering at the senior center, teaching a class I call Know Your Rights. Every Tuesday afternoon, I sit with a group of women and a few men who range in age from 60 to 92. We talk about powers of attorney, about medical autonomy, about the signs of elder abuse, about how to document everything, how to ask questions, how to trust your own mind when everyone around you is telling you it's failing. Last month, a woman named Dorothy came up to me after class with tears in her eyes. Her son had been managing her medications to help out, and she'd been feeling foggy for months. "I thought it was just age," she said. "Everyone said it was just age. But after your class, I started paying attention." She'd switched pharmacies, verified her prescriptions, discovered that her son had been adding anti-anxiety medications that were never prescribed. When she confronted him, he admitted he'd been trying to calm her down so she'd be easier to care for, so he could eventually move her to assisted living and rent out her apartment. "You saved my life," Dorothy told me. "I mean it. You saved my life." I'm not sure I saved her life, but maybe I gave her the tools to save herself. That's all any of us can do, really. Share what we've learned. Warn each other about the dangers we've survived. Build a network of women and men who refuse to be victimized, who support each other, who fight back. We talk about how the person who seems most devoted might be the one you need to watch most carefully. Because here's what I learned. The most dangerous betrayals come wrapped in love. They sound like concern. They look like care. They say, "I'm only trying to help you," while stealing your life 1 pill at a time. My mother's voice comes to me sometimes, late at night when I'm falling asleep in my new condo with Tom snoring gently beside me. A woman who can't save herself is a woman who's already lost. I saved myself. At 62, after my own daughter tried to destroy me, I saved myself. And here's what else I learned. You're never too old to do that. Never too trusting to start questioning. Never too far gone to find your way back. So if you're out there right now wondering whether you're imagining things, whether that devoted child or helpful caregiver or concerned spouse really has your best interests at heart, listen to that small voice of doubt. Document everything, even if it feels paranoid. Trust yourself, even when they tell you not to. Find your Tom, your Beth, your doctor, 10 people outside the situation who can verify what's real. And know that somewhere out there, there's a 64-year-old woman who took her life back from people who tried to steal it, who learned that the most important medication isn't the kind that comes in a bottle. It's the clear-eyed determination to save yourself when no one else will. I'm living proof that it's never too late to stop being a victim and start being a survivor. And that small voice telling you something is wrong? Listen, Deut. Because it might just save your life. I want to speak directly to you now. Yes, you, listening to this story. Maybe you're my age, maybe you're younger, maybe you're caring for an aging parent and wondering if you'd ever recognize the signs I missed. Whatever your situation, I want you to remember something. Trust isn't something you give blindly. It's something that's earned every day through actions that match words. The people who love us should make our lives better, not smaller. They should expand our world, not isolate us from it. They should celebrate our independence, not undermine it. If someone in your life is making you doubt your own mind, questioning your memory, dismissing your concerns, slowly separating you from the people who care about you, pay attention. It might be well-meaning but misguided. Or it might be something much darker. I never thought my own daughter would try to destroy me. I raised her, loved her, sacrificed for her. But something in Claire broke along the way. Something I couldn't fix and didn't see coming. The daughter who tried to steal my house wasn't the baby I'd rocked to sleep or the girl I'd driven to piano lessons. She was someone else, someone desperate, someone ruthless, someone who'd convinced herself that her needs justified any action. Maybe she was always that person underneath. Maybe circumstances revealed a darkness that was always there. I'll never know for certain, and I've stopped trying to figure it out. Some questions don't have answers, and spending your life searching for them is just another way of staying trapped in the past. What I do know is this: I survived. At 62, after my own child tried to take everything from me, I found the strength to fight back. And if I can do it, so can you. So can anyone. My mother's voice one more time. A woman who can't save herself is a woman who's already lost. But here's the thing Mom never said, because she never had to learn it the hard way. You don't have to save yourself alone. Find your Tom. Find your Beth. Find the people who will believe you when you say something's wrong, who will help you gather evidence and build cases and plan escapes. We're not meant to face our darkest moments in isolation. We're meant to reach out, to connect, to let others carry what we can't carry ourselves. I'm 64 years old. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I'm in love with a man who believes me, who fights for me, who makes me laugh every single day. And I'm telling you this story because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear it. Someone who's starting to doubt themselves. Someone whose devoted caregiver seems a little too interested in their finances. Someone whose pills make them foggy in ways they can't quite explain. If that's you, start writing things down. Make copies of documents. Hide a phone where only you can find it. Tell someone, anyone, what you're experiencing. And remember that the most dangerous betrayals come wrapped in love. But also remember that love, real love, the kind that builds you up instead of tearing you down, that love is still out there waiting for you. You just have to survive long enough to find it. And when you do, when you break free from whoever is trying to break, you know that I'm out here rooting for you. We survivors have to stick together.